Ah yes, the art of the box. And I'm not talking about slamming your boxes together. Nah, I mean left, right, good night. That's right, we're talking about the fighting types, and we're gonna talk about the ones that got even better at it over time. And for the sake of my brain cells, I will not be mentioning Fire Punch, Ice Punch, and Thunder Punch unless it's actually important and an actual part of the Mon's toolkit that is consistently used and not just there. But before that, Mist Magius, Let's Plays, Mystic Reads and What Ifs for What Ifs and Narrations. Link will be in the description below. Primape is a Pokemon whose tools are interesting to say the least. Off the top of my head, this Pokemon here has gotten access to a rather sparse, albeit impactful spread of support over the years. Getting U-turn to pivot out was pretty massive, and bulk up to actually set up was always a welcome addition. Getting close combat was also massive, because that boosted its damage threshold in a way that Cross Chop could never. Gunk Shot being part of its kit, the deal with fairies, is really nice too. Defiant as a hidden ability was and still is massive, as punishing Intimidate and Defog is a plan that never gets old. But one of the most impactful buffs is the existence of Annihilate. Access to Eviolite gave Primeape bulk it never would have otherwise, and that bulk lets it take advantage of Rage Fist. Sure, it not being stab means it takes a bit to really get going, but hey, that's a fair trade-off given your bulk thanks to Eviolite and Drain Punch to get HP back. Recommended Terra? Ghost. So you can truly be budget Annihilate. One could argue that one of the biggest buffs Hitmonchan ever got was Gen 2 splitting special attack and special defense. Hitmonchan was quite literally worthless back in Gen 1 because of how low its special stat was, so this fixes a giant gaping issue with the mod. Outside of that, I mean, Iron Fist boosted elemental punches that became actually physical and are actually integral to its kit. Ice Punch and Drain Punch make a rather potent combination, and Rapid Spin getting buffed to increase speed in Gen 8 then proceeded to give Hitmonchan the potential to maybe just possibly sweep a team while getting rid of hazards if you were like really lucky and so deep into your opponent's head that you won the match regardless. And Hitmonchan doing the sweeping was for flavor. Bullet Punch for priority was always appreciated as a means to pick off weakened fairies. I think two of the biggest, most meaningful and impactful buffs it got were access to Swords Dance and Knockoff. Being bestowed these in Gen 9 did wonders for it. And while it still isn't amazing, it's a whole lot better now. Hitmonlee also got these tools too, but this isn't about Hitmonlee. Recommended Terra, Dark for Knockoff, or Steel to beat your weaknesses. Breloom is a bit of a weird one when it comes to the buffs it got. Game Freak has always been very conservative with what kind of buffs they gave Breloom. Sometimes it feels like they're afraid that one day with the right buff, Breloom is going to become amazing or something. Don't get me wrong, it's good, but not good enough to where buffing it could lead to an untimely demise for the game's health. Now, what did they give Breloom? Well, they gave it actual physical grass stab in Gen 4, and that was pretty massive. Toxic Orb was also huge for it, because now people can make use of Poison Heal more consistently, which is always nice for bulky Breloom peeps. Technician in Gen 5 is also really nice, because that makes Mach Punch sets all the more lethal. Personally though, I consider Loaded Dice to be a really nice indirect buff, because now you can play a Bullet Seed set with Technician and actually be kinda rewarded for it. Recommended Terra? Fighting, because you want to win with boosted Mach Punch. So the Gallade buffs are buffs that feel like they can be essentially speedrun through. because they basically didn't give it that much, but quite literally every time they buffed it, it started to see play to a pretty good degree for a minute. They gave it Justified in Gen 5, which is a pretty who cares ability. But then in Oras, they give it a whole Mega as an excuse for why Wally is going to go through one of the biggest glow-ups in fiction. This Mega then proceeded to see actual unironic play for a while, as the prospects of a fast but bulky bulk-up sweeper with Drain Punch to recover HP, and then Ice Punch and Zen Headbutt was very nice to look at. And then an all-out Swords Dance attacker with CC, and then the same 2 coverage buttons was really nice to have. It's just a shame that Inner Focus didn't get buffed to ignore Intimidate until Gen 8. Otherwise, Landorus T in Gen 6 and 7 would have been checking the closet for Gallade every night before bed. But alas, it is what it is. In Gen 9 though, they gave it Sharpness, which was probably the single best sting ever outside of the whole ass Mega. Because Leaf Blade, Aqua Cutter, Sacred Sword, and Psycho Cut became real options. And I'm sure that Gallade appreciated never having to miss Zen Headbutt again. Recommended Terra? Smogon Forums didn't give me one, so I say do fighting and hope it works. I think Heracross is a contender for one of the most buffed Pokemon ever. They gave it actual fighting stab in Gen 3, so it quit relying entirely on Megahorn and Lord HP fighting, or a really gimmicky reversal set. Brick Break and Focus Punch were a blessing, let me tell you. And then they gave it Rock Slide in tandem with that, because when asked why it didn't have that originally, the devs said, I have no idea, and then patched that into Advanced. Then they gave it Moxie in Gen 5, meaning that you could actually choose not to play Salix, S'more, Megahorn, and Flamore plus Protect, and could play a menacing sweeper threat with no gimmicks. Combine this with eventually getting a whole Mega and multi-hit moves like Pin Missile, Rock Blast, Bullet Seed, Skill Link, and then the second highest attack in the game, and you quite literally never knew what Heracross was gonna cook until the food was put on the plate. Even without the Mega, they never stopped buffing it, with Knockoff and Trailblaze being the most recent stuff. And Loaded Dice now lets it relive the glory days of having a Mega. But now, it can run Moxie, which I want to try at some point. Recommended Terra? Depends on the set. Dark and Fighting work for Moxie sets, and Normal works for Flame Orb sets. Because, hey, click Facade. I'm not even gonna really talk about Mega Lucario, because it's one of those buffs that is incredibly one-dimensional. Adaptability stab with those stats is really cool, and there's no reason to try to look for meaning in a blank piece of paper that when curled up and thrown at somebody, it somehow turns into a grenade. So instead, we're gonna talk solely about base Lucario, and analyze how much they have given it over the years. I for one appreciate that they have had the decency to give it Blaze Kick, because for some reason, they thought it was necessary to make sure Bro always beats Scizor. Meteor Mash in Gen 7 was really nice, because, I don't know, Iron Tail and Metal Claw weren't cutting it. Although, I think its actual most specifically amazing buff was just giving it Terra. The ability to become Bargain Bin Dragonite with Terra normal E-Speed is respectable. This segment basically would not be possible without Generation 9's second DLC bringing this dude back and bringing it life. Like, good lord. They were giving Bro absolutely nothing for what felt like eons, outside of exactly Reckless in Gen 6, which was just not enough. Gen 9 then proceeded to roll around and give it actual moves that it will actually use. Close Combat is just better superpower for it. Knockoff is always a nice utility. Trailblaze means that, technically, you no longer have to play Scarf if you don't want to, but this is incredibly risky. You can technically also play Drain Punch on it to at least try to compensate for the amount of recoil you're going to be taking from Flare Blitz and Wild Charge. I just wish they gave it High Jump Kick so it can truly have real fighting stab. Recommended Terra, Electric to beat bulky waters. Trust. In the nicest way possible to Kommo-o, its first and only real buff in Gen 8 was having a Z move that didn't need a Z crystal, but in return, it was taking damage and not dealing it. Personally, I think I would have preferred Z crystals. But hey, Game Freak wanted kaiju battles and not cool super moves. But Throat Spray was nice, so that way you could set up even further for a special attacking set. But the problem is that fighting in Dragon is such a defensively horrid typing. If only there was some sort of way to not be so defensively horrid. Oh, now we can use Boom Burst. Huh. I guess Medicham did get buffed over the years. Just more indirectly. Gen 4 giving it Physical Psychic Stab, Elemental Punches, and Trick all gave it some level of versatility that didn't make it solely the high jump kick Pokemon. Choice Scarf may be one of the best things to ever happen to it, because even if it's locked to one move, being able to actually have a speed tier made it a very potent offensive breaker thanks to huge power. And tricking your Choice Scarf on the some sort of wall was always nice if you couldn't break it normally. Obviously, there's the Mega in Gen 6, which is just Medicham, but actually good. And when I say actually good, I mean OU for all 2 gens it was in, and very good in that tier. Who would have thought that stats like these, an ability like Pure Power, and then access to exactly Fake Out, Bullet Punch, High Jump Kick, and Ice Punch would make such a potent cleaner? In Gen 9, outside of getting close combat in Trailblaze, not much really changed. Recommended Terra? Fighting. Because I want to commit to close combat damage. Ah yes, El Pájaro Rojo. This Pokemon was pretty alright in Gen 6, being way too good for UU, but not being good enough to be an OU proper. But for what it's worth, things were fine. But Hawlucha's buff was never anything Game Freak gave it directly outside of close combat. No, its buff was some seeds with corresponding terrains and the power of friendship. Bro took a trip to Melee Island and met up with this island guardian dude named Tapu Koko, and it was on site. Game sees game, and they saw game. They instantly formed one of the greatest duos in Pokemon history, tearing teams apart as a unit. Tapu Koko set up the terrain and destroyed bulky waters, while Hawlucha came in with Electric Seed being consumed. Then it set up a Swords Dance, and then won from there with Acrobatics and High Jump Kick. This would continue throughout Gen 8. While it doesn't have Koko in Gen 9, it and Indeedee basically do the same thing in UU. Recommended Terra? Flying works, and so does Steel to get use of Iron Head, because no fairies allowed. And yeah, I actually don't know how to write this outro. I don't know, go form a tag team duo with your friends. Train together to become better warriors. Maybe the greatest buff you'll get in life is a good buddy? Yeah, we'll stick with that. But let me know what typing you want to see next.